The Lord has chosen Zion, a song of ascent. Psalm 132. Remember, O Lord, in David's favour, all the hardships he endured, how he swore to the Lord and vowed to the Mighty One of Jacob, I will not enter my house or get into my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the Mighty One of Jacob. You know, for the Jewish people, there was no more sacred, blessed, cherished, honoured, venerated, revered, holy or special place than the temple. It was the centre of their very world. It was the house upon the rock, the place where Yahweh dwelt. It was the intersection where heaven and earth met. And it would have been a place that any God-fearing religious child of Israel would have known very well. The festivals which took place throughout the year would have been celebrated there, and many thousands of people would have visited there to bring their sacrifices and find atonement for their sin. It was a place that you needed to stay close to, that you needed to stay in close contact with. And like any institution, ceremonial practices formed and developed over time, some of which we read about in Scripture. Today's Psalm 132 is an example of one of these ceremonial traditions. You see, the temple was built on a mountain. So in order to access the temple, you would need to ascend up the mountain. And the pilgrims who would be making the ascent would sing songs. And a collection of these songs became known as the Songs of Ascent. And so this Psalm 132 would have been sung or recited by those on a pilgrimage to the temple itself. And so this psalm, this Song of Ascent, recounts parts of the story of how the temple itself came to be built. The psalm helps us to remember the story of David. David, who apart from Jesus, the one who was known as the Son of David, was Israel's greatest king. But verse 1 also reminds us that David, like the Messiah, suffered many great hardships. Here are just a few. He was despised and criticised by his family. He faced many life and death struggles. He was accused of treachery and treason. He was attacked by powerful and ruthless men, including the king Saul, who David defended with his life. David lived as a fugitive. He was robbed of his family, his home, his friends, and his career. He faced numerous enemies in battles, including the giant Goliath. He was openly scorned, criticised, and despised by his own wife. He suffered because of his sin and scandal. He endured great conflict within his own family. And his oldest son staged a coup against him, which led to civil war. Yes, David was a man who knew great adversity, great suffering, great opposition, but he also knew a great and powerful God who, despite every one of his failings and fallings, continued to preserve and promote David, ultimately causing him to overcome every one of his hardships and to reign over all Israel as her greatest human king until the coming of the Messiah. And David knows this. He knows that every one of his victories, his blessings, the escapes by the skin of his teeth are down to the grace of his God. And now David wants to do something for God. So we read in 2 Samuel 7 that David has just finished building himself a palace. And his heart is heavy because God doesn't have a place to dwell in. And so David makes a vow. I will not enter my house or get into my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the Mighty One of Jacob. But God don't roll like that. You don't build God a house. He builds you one. And that's exactly what he says to David. I took you from the pasture, from the following of the sheep, that you should be prince over my people Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut off all your enemies from before you. And I will make you a great name, like the name of the great ones of the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them, so that they may dwell in their own place and be disturbed no more. And violent men shall afflict them no more, as formerly. From that time I appointed judges over my people Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. Moreover, the Lord declares to you that he will make you a house. Oakwood, David's response is a very natural and human one. Someone does something for you, you want to do something for them. For David, he looked around at everything God had given him, the splendor that he was now living in, and he thought, I want to build one of these for God. But you don't build a house for God. Remember this account from Matthew 17. And 6 days after, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And as he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Peter wants to build a dwelling place for Jesus, but God says, Peter, shut it. See, the joke is that this account occurs literally straight after this one. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, Who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. He said to them, But who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Peter doesn't get to build a house for Jesus. He doesn't get to build the church. Jesus builds his own house. Jesus builds his own church. Then and now. My sisters and brothers, we all have an idea of the kind of house we think God should live in. We all have an opinion on what the church of Jesus Christ should look like. But we don't get to build it. He does. Jesus will build and is building his church. We just have to have the faith that he knows what he's doing and be obedient to the leading and calling of his Spirit. The Church of Jesus Christ is undergoing the next phase of its development, the next phase of its building project. It might not look like the way we want it to or the way we think it should, but we don't get to decide. We don't build his house. He builds ours. May God bless you this day.